Goonies never said die, and apparently the Skeleton Crew Golden State Warriors don't either. It's Phoenix Part 2, an improbable win at Chase, and they did it without a Hall of Famer. We'll tell you about all this coming up on Locked On Dubs.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
What are they going to say now?
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Atta baby. A lot of fight in this Golden State Warriors team. Not always beautiful, but hey, the results, you'll take it. 114-113 over the Memphis Grizzlies. The Warriors are 29-25 on the season. What's going on, everyone? Welcome into Locked On Warriors. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. We appreciate you for making us the #1 sports podcast network in the entire world. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. My name's Charlie Walter, host of the show. Matt Kolsky joins the program. They did it again, man. They did it again. It was ugly for 42 minutes. Let's go 42 minutes of game time. In the final 6, they flipped the script, man. A 17-point deficit to Memphis, and late it was Gui Santos poking the ball everywhere. It was Pat Spencer poking the ball everywhere. It was, Brandon Pajemski stealing an inbounds. He missed the layup. But, I mean, just really that's what the Warriors were doing, man. They were just taking it away from Memphis. They were not allowing the Grizzlies to be comfortable at all. I think it was 5 Memphis points in the final 8 or 9 minutes. Warriors defense stepped up big time. And a big talking point has to be they stepped up big time without really much of Draymond Green down the stretch. They went with a different lineup, and Draymond was a -17. Everyone else is pretty much a plus.
I mean, you just said it right there, right? That time frame you're talking about where Memphis scored 5 points, that they hit 108 with 8:23 left in the fourth quarter. And they finished the game with 113 points. So 8 minutes, 23 seconds, 5 points. Do you know what happened to give them 108 points?
A turnover?
That's correct. Draymond Green turnover. Caldwell Pope had that alley-oop layup finish from Ty Jerome. Timeout, Draymond out. Crushed them the rest of the way. That is as big an indictment of Draymond as anything we can say on this podcast tonight. And I would actually
all season. Been this way all season for the most part.
Certainly far too often this season. And I would actually say the first half wasn't so bad. Well, the last minute or two of the first half was terrible. First 20 plus minutes were fine. But from minute 22 until that substitution, when Al Horford came in for Draymond Green.
Al was so good. 16, 9, and 6.
I told
he had
you.
a great game.
I told you you would get Al when things started to get closer to the end. This guy right here. I love this guy. He's one of my favorite players of all time. He's hurting the team. I don't know what else you can say. You watch him out there tonight, and listen, man. 4 turnovers for Gui Santos, 3 for Moses Moody. You've got guys who are not natural ball handlers handling the ball too much. That's part of what's happening with this team. But like you said, this has been Draymond all season long. And it's one thing to have 3 or 4 turnovers. That's a bad turnover game. 7 turnovers is trash. You can't have it. Draymond would be the first guy to tell you this. You can't have it. And especially if I tell you that the starting lineup is Pat Spencer, Gui Santos, Moses Moody, DeAnthony Melton, and Draymond Green. Who are you looking at to set the tone in that game? It's the Hall of Famer. And he just can't be the guy that is making the critical mistakes. You said he's -17 tonight. By the way, he hit 4 of 6 threes. Usually a huge recipe for success. And even with that, and some of the turnovers are so bad. Draymond Green is truly one of the best passers ever, certainly at the power forward position, one of the best passers ever. And he is doing some of the dumbest stuff you'll ever see. I don't quite know what to make of it. Obviously, he's older. He's not the athlete he was, but that should not be causing what we're seeing from a ball security standpoint on its own. That it's hard for me to understand. It's very frustrating. And he's going to keep sitting the last 8 minutes of basketball games if this is the way he keeps playing.
Let me ask you this. There's been kind of a discourse going around Dub Nation for a while that Draymond doesn't bring the same energy when Steph's not on the floor. Do you believe that?
I believe there have been some scenarios where Draymond Green saw the writing on the wall in a game without Steph and decided his services were not necessary. I can't attribute a night like tonight to that. You're in the middle of the season, like right in the middle of the season. All these games matter. And like, fine, maybe with Jimmy out, you don't think you're good, but what are you going to dog it the rest of the season? That to me does not sound like Draymond. But I don't have a good answer. I don't have a good answer for why a guy who was the driving force from a ball movement standpoint of one of the greatest offenses of all time suddenly wants to throw it off the scoreboard. It's weird. Yes, they've always been careless with the ball to an extent, but not like this. And this was a winnable game all night long, as you saw down the stretch. So,
and a much needed win, Kolsky. That's not a good Memphis Grizzlies team. It's a tanking Memphis Grizzlies team. And if you lost that one, it makes you just scratch your head at home. One you really needed, 29 and 25. Like, let's look at this from a glass half full. Like, we can get into more Draymond later on in the show, but you won the game. You're 4 games over 500. You're still in a decent spot, just a few games out of that 6th spot. I think we all are pessimistic that we're going to get 35 games of Kristaps Porzingis in the second half of the season, and he's going to be healthy for the playoffs, and this is going to be a match made in heaven, and the Warriors are going to have a nice little playoff series win, and we're going to go into next year with a little momentum, and Jimmy's going to return in December and win an NBA championship, and they all lived happily ever after. I don't think many people believe that that's the case, but you want to put yourself in a pretty good position when those two do return post All-Star break. And, losing 2 straight, or rather 3 straight, Lakers, Grizzlies, and then the Spurs, which seems like without Steph, that one is pretty much a scheduled loss, but we'll see. That would not be a good way to go into the break. So this is a big one, man. This was a big W against a team that you should have beaten, and I'm glad they did. I mean, the Grizzlies stink.
Yeah, the Grizzlies aren't good.
And no Ja Morant for them either.
Yeah, but the Warriors aren't good without Steph Curry or Jimmy Butler. So it's a fair fight. This was not I mean, you're right that the Grizzlies aren't good, but this Warriors roster can't take anything for granted against anybody, with the possible exception of the Sacramento Kings and Indiana Pacers. So this mattered. Draymond was terrible, and several people have already said it in the chat. Gui Santos continues to be awesome.
Let's talk about Gui Santos potentially taking Draymond Green's spot. It's not about what you've done in your Hall of Fame career. It's about what you've done for me lately. Is Gui Santos the better player right now than Draymond Green? We're going to debate that coming up on Locked On Warriors.
Destroy Jimmy and Domino's. I know Jimmy drinks great wine.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. Shoot your shot on PrizePicks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. PrizePicks is giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. It's America's #1 app for sports picks. PrizePicks is simple to play. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If your picks are right, you can cash in. You can choose from basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, UFC, and more. Plus, they have features like early payouts and flex plays. You've got options while the games are still happening. I make my NBA lineups around players that I think are going to go over on 3-point shots, rebounds, assists. I mix and match from different games. Makes the juice a little more fun. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, let's get back to the show.
Forget that. We champs. Why are you starting with that question? We got 4 championships.
All righty, so thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't, check out our new Everydayer Club, ad-free audio. You got an Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a Warriors group chat, national group chats as well. Find it in our show bio and join the Everydayers Club. Thank you for listening to the show every single day. It's not always beautiful on this show, but there is a lot of debate, and it changes frequently. You know, from is Pat Spencer the best player on the Warriors under the age of 30 to should Pat Spencer have a roster spot on this team, which he now does, to is Quentin Post one of the best big men defending the basket in the NBA, to where the hell has Quentin Post been? You know, it changes frequently on this team. There's not a lot of consistency. Is fifth year Moses Moody finally the year where he breaks out, or inconsistencies? But I think one thing has been consistent lately. Gui Santos is a legitimate NBA player. Rotation guy? Yes. More? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more, but I think that's significant when you're talking about a guy from Gui Santos's background. You know, I mean, this is not a highly touted prospect. It's a guy you got with the 55th overall pick in the draft, and I think he looked like a guy whose only chance to stick in the NBA was pure energy over the course of the first 2 seasons. He just looks like a different and better player now. And
7 straight games in double figures now for Gui.
And what's really incredible about that, and excuse me while I filibuster a little bit because I'm trying to make sure I get the stats right, but I can't do the 7th because Basketball Reference won't update till tomorrow. But in the first 6, he's doing it shooting 61.4% from the field and 44.4% from 3. And it's not because he's become Steph Curry. It's because he just listen, when you're playing 10 minutes every 3 games, it's not so hard to be a guy that works your butt off and never does dumb stuff, right? You come in for 10 minutes here, run, don't be dumb, don't have to shoot it if I don't want to. I just got to run, try, don't do anything stupid. When you're playing 25 plus minutes a night and the ball's in your hands so much more, that's a lot harder. And I think it is super noteworthy that with basically double, if not triple the playing time, just game to game, he continues to just do all the right things. Look, bad turnovers tonight, but his turnovers aren't like Draymond's bad ones where he's throwing wild passes into the middle of nowhere. It's like, all right, Gui's dribbling at the top of the key, and he's really not up to that challenge at the NBA level. But unfortunately, he's the best ball handler on the floor. He just turned it over. So I just watch a guy who stays within himself constantly, who works hard constantly, and who knows what he's supposed to do on the floor. And you know, do you want him starting and playing 30 minutes a night? Perhaps not. But do you want him playing 20 plus off the bench for you? Absolutely. I think so. Mute Monster. Gotcha, buddy.
We're back. We'll get you from time to time. So you look at the minutes, man, and in November, he was averaging 8 minutes. October, Gui was averaging 5 minutes. He upped it to 13. in January. February, he upped it to 17, and then he's playing 30 minutes per game through the first 4 in March. Like, he is not a rotation player at this point. He's one of the guys that Steve Kerr trusts more than anyone. And you mentioned the numbers. He's grabbing, at this point, close to 7 rebounds per game over his last 8-9 contests. He's dishing out some assists, adding in some steals. The turnovers are a little higher than you would like. There was one today where he kind of just drove it into traffic, and that's something you'll notice with Gui. He's not going to put you on skates, stop on a dime, and knock down a 12-footer for the most part. That's not necessarily his game.
But pretty quick first step, though, dude. I mean, for a pretty big guy, he's got a pretty quick first step. He gets by bigger guys on the perimeter, and he did that a few times tonight.
And he finishes around the rim, man. He finishes around the rim, and now that he's knocking down threes at a pretty good clip, I mean, he's not a bad offensive player by any means, but it goes back to the whole Draymond question. Steve Kerr still feels obligated to play Draymond Green 25 minutes per game, it feels, even when he doesn't decide to close him. Do you think there's a certain point in the season where maybe Steve Kerr says, you know what, I'm going to go with the youth. I'm going to go with the energy. I'm going to go with the guys that are deserving these minutes? And do we take this a step further and look into the fact that Draymond has a player option next season, or is that a conversation for another day?
I think Draymond's picking up that player option because I don't think he's going to get more than that.
You think he'd retire?
No, not if Steph's still here. And I would urge caution overall on Draymond. Because, again, I don't see it at, like, listen.
Do you think we're overreacting?
A little. Although I'm probably predisposed to give the guy more rope because I like the guy. But let me ask you this. Just generally throughout his career, if we're talking about physically, athletically, what do you feel like the most difficult? Like, where has Draymond most used his physicality and athleticism over the course of his career?
Stopping bigger players near the bucket.
Yeah, and he still does that, right? Like, I don't look at what's happening and think, he's too old. He doesn't have it physically anymore. That's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a guy who's, frankly, playing stupider basketball than he used to. And
isn't it more stupid? Grammar, please.
Well, yeah. I saw an incredible Instagram video today about correcting people's grammar. You're right. I made up a word. I was stupider to say stupider. But
keep it.
The bottom line is, man, these are not old man plays. In fact, they're the opposite. This is the sort of stuff you'd think you do less of as you get older and more mature. So I don't know what it is, I guess, is what I'm saying. And maybe if I don't know what it is and no one knows what it is, then the answer is it's not there anymore. But I just don't feel like it's not there. I feel like he's not doing it for some reason. And it makes me frustrated because he's doing his podcast just fine. And he's hitting threes, but some of these passes are truly, I mean, he always made the ones where, like, all right, you only hit that 1 out of every 4 times. Maybe you shouldn't throw it. But some of these passes, it reminds you of, pick someone on this roster who can't pass. It's a lot of options. It reminds you of Quentin Post trying to dribble and pass the ball. It reminds you of Will Richard being a ball handler and passer. But it's Draymond Green. That was his skill. That was his best offensive skill for a long time. I'm vexed. I am vexed.
Well, you know what the good news is? Pat Spencer's still playing good basketball, man. He was 8 of 13 today. It's 7 assists. He had a couple of steals, one big one late. Are you ready to give the man his flowers yet? No. As like dude, he outplayed his brother and then some.
He did outplay his brother, who was awful tonight. So awful that somebody in the chat already suggested he was deliberately tanking. So Congrats.
Dude, I think that's good, man. I mean,
that was a
he's
robust minus 15 tonight.
Listen,
I know
Kolsky.
all the plus minus people are going to write that off somehow because they only like to use that against players who are athletic. But yeah, look, Pat's fine. He is the best you got. And like, he probably deserves a full NBA contract somewhere, you know?
Dude, he brings juice. This team needs
he
juice.
brings energy.
Juice.
And I understand, given what you just said, why he's in the starting lineup. But like, you get what you get, and you don't get upset.
Yeah,
you know?
well, I mean, he's making like $2 million per
that's
year.
Right. That's right. And that's all I want is some realism about Pat Spencer. I'm not trying to tell you that like I hate Pat Spencer. Go home, Pat. None of that. No, he's doing his job, undoubtedly. But it's one of those things that, like, if you need 31 minutes of Pat Spencer, you're in big trouble, man. Big trouble. And it just does not strike me the same way it does with someone like Gui, who I feel like is developing in ways that will be meaningful on a good team. Pat Spencer gets in there and makes things happen and scores on floaters, and good for him.
Let me ask you this. Cam Thomas is no longer an option. The Milwaukee Bucks picked him up in the buyout market. The name that the Warriors are reportedly targeting on is Lonzo Ball, who had big-time injuries, was out for nearly 3 seasons, was having a great season for the Bulls in 2022. Unfortunately, we're in 2026, and he has been awful since. Shooting percentages, 3-point percentages, it's all very bad. A couple teams decided they no longer wanted him. You bring up Pat Spencer. Is Lonzo Ball a better option?
Yes, but it sounds like maybe they saw the medicals on Lonzo and they're not interested.
Is that what we're hearing now?
That's the sort of, well, it's a bit of detective work required, but that seems to be, it was like the Warriors are, 24 or 48 hours ago that it was an imminent signing. It was about to happen. And then all of a sudden it was not so fast. And then someone said they still have to check the medicals. And then I don't know.
They listened to the Locked On Warriors podcast and my rant about why would you go after Lonzo Ball at this point? Big old nothing burger. And they said, you know what? Maybe we listen to this guy.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to look at the details of what the rules are in terms of like, if you did sign him for the rest of the season, does that mean you could sign him in the off season like a bird rights free agent, so you're not subject to the same cap rules? Because like as a backup guard, the best version of Lonzo at this point is like a really smart 3-and-D guard, which would be useful. That said, like you said, he hasn't been able to stay on the floor, and he hasn't been much 3 over the last year plus. In which case, he's not much use. And maybe it is better to get an even better look at Pat Spencer. Maybe the Warriors have a different opinion than me. I've been wrong before, and certainly I've had a different opinion than the Warriors before. But to me, a team that's starting Pat Spencer is not serious about playoff basketball.
Well, the goal is Steph Curry is starting in that position on the 19th, so 10 days from now. Question is, can Pat and Steph kind of coexist? Because Pat's had all his good moments when Steph's been out, for the most part.
No, I mean, listen.
I mean, Pat's got without Steph on the floor or not suited up, and Pat plays more than like 25 minutes, I'd love to pull out the stat. I bet he averages 15 points a game.
I bet he does. Yeah, he scores. That's what he does. That he's a poor man's Ty Jerome in a lot of ways. I just don't know what use a good team has for a poor man's Ty Jerome. That's all. I think I would. I mean, if you're really asking me, I'd rather see LJ Cryer. Like, but either way,
hurt.
Yeah, I know he is hurt. I'm just saying. Pat Spencer can't defend at a level to play next to Steph Curry. So that's a hard no from me at any
All right.
point.
Let's get into
Yeah.
Al Horford, man. Let's talk some Al Horford. Let's get into the San Antonio Spurs. They are coming up next, and we are coming up with some talk about the Dubs straight ahead.
And most importantly, he a dog.
We need more dogs.
All right, today's episode is brought to you by America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel. The winter games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. I love the curling, man. Like, you got to have such good core strength to be sliding backwards on the ice, doing one of those. That's why I've been following the winter games on FanDuel, from medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on sports you care about most. FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action, the drama, the curling, the slow starts to the speed skating that are decided by inches, hockey games, niche events. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from the start to the finish. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed-sponsored jobs is the move. Instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with qualified candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria like skills, certifications, and location. If I were hiring, I wouldn't want someone who can help. I'd want someone with real experience who can jump right in. It's going to save you time, and it's going to save you from spending energy. Here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed-sponsored jobs. Listeners of the show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help you get the job premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. All right, let's get back to the show.
Who can stop Steph Curry?
Hopefully we'll never find out.
We'll get into the matchup with the San Antonio Spurs in just a minute, but you got to talk about Al Horford, who at moments this year, you forgot that he was on the team just because the load management was so strong. And then he had the injury there where it felt like for an entire month, he really didn't play much basketball. And when he did, it wasn't that it was ineffective or anything. He just didn't really make that much of a difference. But he has, in a lot of these games as of late, including the Suns' come from behind victory, including tonight's come from behind victory against Memphis, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, didn't turn it over once, had a steal, had offensive rebounds, played good defense without fouling in his 26 minutes, and was a plus 24 with Draymond Green staring right at you in the face with a minus 17 on the box score. You wonder, man. I hate to turn this entire show into like, does Draymond Green deserve some of these minutes? But with the way Al Horford's playing and with Kristaps Porzingis joining the fold, like if the Warriors do get to a position where they're the 8th seed and they're taking on the 9-seeded, let's say, Portland Trailblazers come April, like, are you changing up this lineup at all to get a little bit more of Al Horford? 30 minutes of Al Horford.
I don't know if Al can give you 30, man. I mean, I really
In a playoff series? In a do or die, you don't think Al has 30 in him?
Yeah, maybe a couple of times, but like
you've been saving him.
Yeah, for this. I think 26 minutes, 7 for 12, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 0 turnovers, 0 fouls, and a plus 24. That's the most you can expect from Al Horford, and I think that is a lot from a 39-year-old man who most of Warrior fandom was convinced was washed as recently as a month ago. He's great. Al Horford is a Hall of Fame player and is capable of doing this, and I think he could even do that with 25-ish minutes. He could do that for you 4 or 5 times in a long playoff series if you needed him to. he can't be your 35-minute a night guy.
No,
That's asking too much.
No,
So
I would.
I mean, that would be my response right now with Porzingis out. I think mostly Draymond's playing not because Steve Kerr feels compelled to play Draymond, but because there's no better option right now. That said, I would not be shocked if Draymond takes off for his All-Star vacation tonight and you see Quentin Post in there with Al Horford a little bit on Wednesday.
We got some discourse going on right now in the chat, and I think this is just through pretty much all of Dub Nation right now. You got the Draymond is washed and needs to be on the bench, and then 3 comments later, the Dre hate is so forced. It's truly hard to say because he's had some stretches this year where he's played decent basketball, but I think the glaring standout point to me is just all those ejections or all those games where he didn't play down the stretch or whatever. It seems like the Warriors are able to kind of pick up what he does. Like the defense without him isn't some lost cause. And
not in the playoffs, though. Not in a real game.
And that's the argument you make.
Yeah, sure. Against Memphis on a Monday, why not? Against the Spurs on Wednesday, a little harder. Against Minnesota in May, forget it.
It wasn't that long ago in, I think, November where we saw Draymond kind of maybe not lock up Wemby, but played some pretty good defense on him.
Nobody locks up Wemby, but he was as good as anybody. And how about against the Rockets last season in the playoffs? That's why he's here. That's why you play him all year. But, I mean, we've talked about this. I feel like I've been talking about this for 5 years. The margin for error is smaller for this Warriors team, and it will continue to shrink as they get older. And you know, there's just the roster is a little bit bare right now with all the injuries. They can't have 7 turnovers from a Hall of Famer. You can't afford it, you know? And I get the frustration with Draymond. Now, the people who say he sucks and he should be benched or cut or whatever, like, you're probably the same people who didn't understand why you needed him in 2015. And I don't have a lot of time for that. But if you're going to make a solid, like, there is a solid argument to be made that if he's playing the way he has played throughout most of this season, you'd be better off without him. I don't know how possible that is logistically to move on from Draymond. Like you said, he has a player option. It's for enough money that it's going to be hard for him to get better than that. Now, maybe he finds somewhere to give him 3 years to make up for what he would have made in 1 year, or make more, I should say. But it's funny. With Steph Curry, I think the odds are he finishes his career as a Warrior because everybody involved wants to see that happen, and it seems like the right thing and the best thing. In the case of Draymond, I think it's kind of likely he finishes his career as a Warrior because there's not a lot of good options for either side of the equation.
What did you think about Mike Dunleavy coming out and saying that he thinks Draymond's in a great spot? They're in a great spot with Draymond. They weren't looking to trade Draymond. There are teams that reach out every deadline and ask about Draymond. You calling BS?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, it was
Mike
no
Dunleavy's been lying through his teeth for weeks. So, you know, whatever. What do you want him to come out and tell the exact truth? I wouldn't want that out of my GM.
How's the reporter kind of doubling down and being like, oh, so it was Jimmy that was in the trade? And he's like, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this.
Because he's full of it. Yeah, no, those were the right questions. That was Danny Emmerman, I believe, asking absolutely reasonable questions that followed logically from the reporting that's been out there. And like, while, look, Mike Dunleavy's not an idiot, right? The way he said what he said, we're not going to go down the roster and talk about who was in and out of trades is a reasonable stance for a GM to take, but that's not what Danny was doing. That's not what was happening at all. There are 2 players specifically who would have to be in a Giannis trade, period. End of story. Draymond or Jimmy, one of the 2 has to go. So it's a totally reasonable question. And, the GM is in a tough spot there. He can't be like, yeah, 100% true. Man, if the Bucks would have just taken our offer, we'd have this guy out of here, and he'd be turning it over 7 times in Milwaukee. Right?
Him and Cam Thomas, 1-2 punch,
right.
baby.
He's not gonna say that. So yeah, that is not something I take seriously at all. All
right, guys, sky's not falling. The Warriors are 29 and 25.
Hey, it was a win tonight. The sky's raising, baby. Raise the roof.
It was a good night, man. San Antonio, you somehow find a way to take them down on Wednesday, and life is good. That's a tall task that you got ahead of you without Steph Curry, without Kristaps Porzingis. But even assuming they lose 29-26 going into the break, we've seen crazier things. The Warriors have put themselves in a position to at least have a chance. Now, it may be a 1-game chance as an 8, 9, or 10 seed come postseason time. But what did Lloyd Christmas tell us, man? You're telling me there's
a chance. Listen, I am gonna say it again, and it might seem weird after a night like tonight, and it'll probably seem even weirder if they lose by 50 on Wednesday. But you get Steph Curry back, totally different team. And the Lakers, I mean, the Rockets are certainly a better collection than the Warriors, but they haven't covered themselves in glory lately. The T-Wolves, the Suns, these are not great basketball teams. These are teams that the Warriors, with a healthy Steph Curry, can compete with. Not so much Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Denver, but like the 6 seed is something the Warriors can still aim for if they are healthy coming out of the All-Star break. And that's something.
Do your best and forget the rest, Dubs. All right, everyone, have a great night. This is Locked On Warriors, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Kolsky, be good. Have a great night, man.
Let's go.